Welcome to American Education FM, everybody. I'm Dr. Sean Brooks. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Here is where I will begin. Let me provide a brief summary as to what I'd like to cover here in this episode. I want to play some audio from one of the hearings that took place specifically regarding Pam Bondi. And an interesting revelation, I think, that is going to be really fun to watch if it does in fact come true. I'll get to that in just a second, and again, kick it off with some audio with an exchange between her and Senator Dick Durbin, who again is dirtier than dirty gets. I would like to read also a particular ex-post having to do with Jonathan Greenblatt and how essentially he alluded to anybody who is a quote-unquote anti-Semite should be targeted with the same, we'll say vigor, so to speak, as Mossad and the IDF went after Palestinians by, again, hacking and rigging, I should say, their pagers and having them explode on their person. Again, he's openly advocating for people to be physically gone after and or eliminated if they are deemed to be anti-Semites, quote unquote. So he's the devil. There's no doubt about that. And I'll play that and read a little bit about that in the future as well here. Excuse me, there's also this. A great deal of education news, a couple of revelations, including a so-called breach, if that's to be believed, by the PowerSchool technology group, which is the same login program that students and staff use for grades, attendance, certain assignments, etc., etc. And in Central Ohio, Westerville City Schools being one of them, again, a school district I cover on the show with regularity, their entire system was allegedly hacked. I say allegedly because they can't comprehend that it might just be flat-out money laundering, and that there might just be money being changed, exchanging hands, so to speak, behind the scenes in order for certain groups that are foreign to get a hold of said information. And then, of course, PowerSchool writes a long memo telling everybody that everybody's safe again and don't worry about it and everybody's fine, when in fact, everybody's data, social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, you name it, emails, all of that information is now in the hands of a foreign party. This is an angle that those who run public schools cannot comprehend because apparently they can't comprehend corruption, let alone foreign interference, which is exactly what a great deal of these technology companies are. They're foreign, and they have foreign influence. So I'll cover that in depth as well. And then I want to end with a particular article having to do with the RICO statute and how time is running out on RICO when it comes to quote-unquote COVID and that whole lie and the rollout of the biological weapon, which again, unfortunately, is not a topic that's been brought up much in any of these hearings. I heard it a little bit in John Ratcliffe's hearing for director of the CIA. Again, COVID and the pandemic were, of course, brought up as if it was real. There are some Democrat senators like Gillibrand from New York who is even commenting on how unfortunate she thinks that it all is, and we still don't know the origins of this, that, and the other, and that concerns her. Well, again, these answers exist. They're out there, and we know what they are. We've been over them here on the show. It's a biological weapon. It's 5G implementation. It's a number of things. It's, of course, everything that's in pre-existing injections as well, and all of that combined with one another. But yeah, it's not bat soup. But that particular article, again, is certainly worth the read. In fact, I'll link it in the description below and briefly go through it here in this particular episode. So let me start with this. I'm going to start with this audio. And again, there's a lot of half-truths in all of these hearings that are taking place. And I would encourage people to understand, as I'm sure you're well aware, that it's the middle road where you're going to find the answer. It's not what one proverbial side of the aisle is saying or the other is saying. They're both wrong, which is exactly why the answer exists right in the middle. And of course, that's our free will. We have free will to pay attention to that and investigate that and not lean on these people or look to them to actually be the harbingers of any truth, because they aren't. Certainly not Dick Durbin, and frankly, I have some questions about Pam Bondi also regarding a number of things. Familial ties, favoritism, nepotism, a number of things. So either way, it'll be interesting to see what actually happens. But regarding her hearing overall, I thought it was interesting, and the loudest people that came after her in that hearing were Mazie Hirono, Adam Schiff, let me see, I believe at least another guy from either New Mexico or California, another senator, my apologies, Aguilar, if that's his name. I think I'm getting that wrong. And then, of course, Blumenthal. There we go. Richard Blumenthal from Connecticut. All of these people were worried about the same thing, which was her inability to say that the 2020 election was stolen. It was very telling that they were worried about that because it's pretty clear, I think, that Pam Bondi fully knows that 2020 was stolen and that she has ample evidence that that's the case, and there is ample evidence that that's the case, and her job, of course, as the Attorney General is to get to the bottom of that, to then, of course, reverse everything regarding 2020 and Joe Biden's administration, which is also, again, what the final article in this episode that I'll read through briefly, at least highlight certain points of it, and link in the description below, is that that's what that article points out also. What you've heard me say again here on the show, it reverses everything that Joe Biden allegedly signed in the first place. Again, this has to be done, and this has to play out in the public square for everybody to see, because if it doesn't, then people are going to continue to believe lies. So all of this evidence, again, has to come out again, even though it was coming out at the time in 2021, certainly, in the latter half of 2020 after the election. But this has to be shown again to the people, and this has to be reversed. So with that said, let me play this quick exchange between, it's about 5 minutes long, between Durbin and Pam Bondi, and you'll know exactly where I'm going with this. So give this a listen in 3, 2, 1.
Ms. Bondi, I'd like to say something, and I hope you agree with it. Violence is never acceptable when it comes to political expression. Period.
I think I said that initially. Yes, I do agree. Of course I agree.
I abhor that sort of thing happening when it comes to conservative Supreme Court justices, and I abhor it when it comes to Nancy Pelosi's husband being attacked in his home.
That was horrible.
Which we should all say unequivocally both are unacceptable. I think you agree, correct?
Horrible.
All right. I guess as I reflect on what you've said today, a couple things surprised me. I did not expect you to be as outspoken as you are about Kash Patel. He's been characterized as a professional career defense attorney and a career prosecutor. That's a pretty amazing achievement in his life. But he also has said and done some things which are impossible to understand and justify. For example, are you familiar with something called the QAnon conspiracy?
I have heard of it, but I do not know what it is, but I've heard of it many times, Senator.
So let me tell you what I've learned about it. The core belief is that a cabal of satanic, cannibalistic child molesters are embedded within our government and are conspiring against President-elect Trump. They asked Mr. Patel about it, and he said, quote, "I agree with a lot that the movement says," end of quote. Does that sound like a good preparation to run the FBI?
Senator, I don't know anything about, I had heard of QAnon, but I've never heard that definition attached to it at all. You're going to have to ask Mr. Patel about those statements.
We will. And I'll tell you, until we get answers to those questions, I don't know many people on this side of the table will give him an unequivocal endorsement. This and his enemies list, what he calls his government gangsters. This is what you expect of Stasi. This is what you expect of secret police. It is not what you expect of justice in America, as you've even described it at the table today. So I would say this unequivocal support of Mr. Patel should at least have some reservation until he explains some of these outrageous positions he has taken.
I look forward to hearing his testimony about QAnon in front of this committee.
You will. Let me say another word about January 6th and what happened. We lived through it, many of us. We'll never forget it. To think that the United States of America's Capitol building was desecrated by an insurrectionist mob that came in and did horrible things, particularly to our police force. It keeps you safe as you sit there and keeps us safe every single day. Over 100 of them were attacked by these demonstrators. One, Kenneth Bonowitz, a member of the so-called Proud Boys, another alt-right group, assaulted at least 6 officers, placed one in a chokehold and lifted him up by the neck. Bonowitz injured one officer so severely he had to retire. Kyle Fitzsimmons, convicted for 5 separate assaults against law enforcement, including one that caused a career-ending and life-altering injury to U.S. Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Ganell. Can you understand why when Donald Trump says, the day I am inaugurated as president, I will issue a blanket pardon to these, quote, political prisoners? We view this with an outrage on our side. These men and women risk their lives for us every day, and they almost died. Some of them did die in the course of this attack. Why aren't we treating them as such, and why do you have to reserve judgment? Vice President Vance didn't when he was asked this week. He said that pardon should not be extended to those who were guilty of violence against policemen.
Yeah, and Senator, I do not agree with violence against anyone, but especially police officers. And every time I've been walking through these halls, meeting with all of you, the men and women of the Capitol Police Department are incredible. They do a great job. They deserve to be safe. And I do not agree with violence against any police officer.
I would hope.
I never have, Senator.
You weren't able to answer my question affirmatively earlier, but I would hope that if this moves forward in a positive way on your nomination, you will speak up at some point on behalf of these police officers who are keeping you safe today and your family safe. I yield.
Okay. Before Senator Graham, I want to enter into the record without objection from the members of this committee letters from law enforcement groups who support Ms. Bondi's nomination. These groups include the Fraternal Order of Police, the National Sheriff's Association, the National Association of Police Organizations. They praise her, quote, support for law enforcement, crime prevention, and public safety, end of quote, without objection.
So first of all, Dick Durbin and his hypocrisy know no bounds whatsoever. He's a complete fool. He's either willfully ignorant or he's just retarded. It's one of the two. Either way, he opened up, of course, by talking about the attack on Nancy Pelosi's husband and actually called that politically motivated. There's no proof that was politically motivated. Pelosi was in his PJs or in his tighty whities, whatever it was. His tighty whities, as a matter of fact. And he has a surprised look on his face, but he almost looks like he knows who the person is. He's trying to calm the individual who has the hammer who's in his house. And he's being attacked. And then, of course, the dude was tased and he was detained, and I believe he's even been given life in prison, which seems a bit steep. I mean, assault with a deadly weapon, okay. I don't think it's life in prison, but either way, it's, yeah. I mean, they chalked it up to politically motivated, to basically, again, get around anybody asking any questions about any of it, because they don't want more questions asked about it. So yeah, there's no proof it was politically motivated. But again, Dick Durbin is a liar, and he covers things up, and this is what he does for a living. The big point in what I heard, of course, had to do with asking Pam Bondi about Kash Patel about knowing about what they call QAnon. There is no QAnon. There's no such thing. There is Q, and then there are Anons. That's it. There's no QAnon. First of all, my understanding is that the FBI director doesn't have to be confirmed by the Senate, that he's appointed by the president and works alongside the Department of Justice, or that Pam Bondi would hire Kash Patel to be the FBI director at the, again, direction of the President of the United States. But the President, of course, can basically pull Kash's card anytime he wants and have him resign or what have you, that it's typically a 7 to 10 year appointment, something along those lines. Either way, there is no QAnon, there is just Q and then Anons. The simple fact that Durbin would bring this up yet again is just like the same point. And again, it's projection. It's psychological projection. They're bringing it up, not thinking about the fact that their words could come back and haunt them and bite them right in the ass. Just like, again, in the local school board meeting that I brought up in a previous episode, where one of the board members was like, well, we don't do that, and we like each other here, and we don't target people, and doing this is wrong, and we would never do anything wrong, and blah, blah, blah. Anytime somebody speaks like that, they have something to hide. They're covering up endless things. And you heard them all right there. I mean, they all look forward to a time when Kash Patel sits in front of the Judiciary Committee and answers questions about quote-unquote QAnon. I have to tell you something. This is going to be, in my opinion, one of the most interesting hearings that takes place, is if Kash Patel is actually in front of these nitwits answering questions about that. The answers that Kash Patel is going to give are going to be fascinating, because he knows what it is. He knows who's behind it. He knows that these individuals, again, were disseminating accurate information in a Socratic method, while also making hardened points and trying to wake up the American people and the world populace to what governments do behind the scenes and in front of people's faces regarding every kind of corruption and illegality you can possibly imagine, including, of course, corporate corruption, greed, murder, rape, child trafficking, body part selling, all of it. That's why if anybody says, as you've heard me criticize people, they'll say, whatever, Q's bullshit and it's a psyop. Really? Is it really? Is it a negative psyop or is it a positive one? Again, it was a positive one to wake up endless people, but Dick Durbin bringing it up is only highlighting it even more. That should tell people that people should go and read those posts. Go back on the OperationQ.pub, QAnon.pub websites and read those posts. Read them in order. From the very first one at the end of October of 2017 all the way through, I believe, 2022 was the last time that Q made any kind of a post. And the person that you heard giggling after Durbin made a comment about looking forward to having Kash Patel show up and answer questions about that, and how everybody on this side of the aisle, so to speak, or this side of the dais is interested in what he has to say. You heard one of the senators start to giggle, like, I know, we'll get him. I know more about it than he does, and ha ha ha. That was Sheldon Whitehouse from Rhode Island, Democrat. He's a complete piece of trash. And he's laughing as if to say that he's looking to, I don't know, box him into a corner or do whatever. That can't happen. Kash Patel read those posts. He was probably even involved to some degree. But again, the biggest point is that level of projection is borderline criminal, and it's almost a criminal admission. Again, you would think that these people would keep their mouths shut about such information being disseminated to the public. You would think that. You would think that they would find something else about Kash Patel to go after, or another concern that they have regarding him and his involvement with Donald Trump and government and XYZ. They're honing in on the very thing that they are involved in. And this is going to be brought up again in this Judiciary Committee sometime in the future. I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to bring you that audio. This is going to be amazing. Are these politicians going to be so stupid that they actually read Q posts on the record in the Judiciary hearing, which is considered, again, or the Judiciary Committee, that committee is considered one of the higher committees or highest committee in all of the legislative branch of government? Are they really going to do that? Are they going to be that dumb? They probably will, because they actually believe in their backwards heads that by reading those posts or bringing it up to the public, that they can just have a nice laugh about it, instead of just staying quiet about it and not bringing it up at all. I love it. I just love it. All it's doing is validating those posts even more. That's all it's doing. With that aside, briefly, one of the things, of course, that's happening in a lot of these committees is the FBI, if this is to be believed, is slow rolling the background checks of some of Trump's cabinet picks. And again, I don't know if that story is true or not, but all it's going to do, of course, is force Donald Trump to put these individuals in these positions without being confirmed by any of these committees, because, again, theoretically, they don't have to be. I've been over that process before. It's hundreds of days that they're allowed to have the particular job as a sitting or acting individual within the cabinet for, again, said positions. So I don't know. It's going to be interesting, but I think the next one that I'll certainly pay attention to is going to be Linda McMahon regarding the Department of Education, because even more legislation, of course, has come out regarding getting rid of the Department of Education. And I got to tell you, if you watch any school board meeting, in particular across the United States, they're all in lockstep with one another, panicking about what it's going to be like if they don't have a federal Department of Education. They don't even know why the federal Department of Education was created in the first place, let alone its removal. They just sort of have this blank stare on their faces, as if to think that all hell is going to break loose if all of a sudden the department goes away, or it gets moved into other departments or broken up into other departments or what have you. And I've heard lots of different takes on why that's the case. I've heard some individuals claim, again, that it has to do with Noahide laws, which are not good. Their Zionist, Zionist application of emotional laws, or more control, just sort of broken apart across numerous other avenues and other departments. But again, with that aside, I don't know if that's really taking place or not. Either way, the department never had to exist in the first place, but breaking it up for legal purposes to make sure that people still, of course, have, as they always have, hopefully, legal representation and legal rights as individuals who, again, attend American schools, in particular the disabled, then, I mean, that's not going to go away. So the Department of Education being done away with is, it's common sense. But again, it's going to be interesting to see what happens in that Linda McMahon hearing when the time comes for that. Unless, of course, there is no confirmation hearing for it, and she's just placed in there to basically get rid of it, and then people vote on abolishing the Department of Education in Congress, and then it goes to the Senate, and then Trump signs it. We'll see if any of that happens. But either way, I'll bring that to everybody's attention as well, and certainly plenty of audio from that also. Okay, moving on. Here's the particular X post I wanted to read regarding Jonathan Greenblatt, and then I'm going to play the audio afterwards. But let me read this first. This was from the Patriot Voice at TPV_John. It says the following. Jonathan Greenblatt, CEO of the Anti-Defamation League, ADL, and former Obama staffer, just said something absolutely shocking in front of the Israeli Knesset, if I'm saying that right. He suggested that a new IDF Unit 8300 be created with the same kind of genius, quote unquote, behind the horrific Lebanon pager terrorist attack as a way to fight anti-Semitism at home. He also made comparisons to how pushing extremists off Wikipedia and capturing TikTok don't seem as significant as battling Hezbollah, but need to be taken deadly seriously. He went on himself and said, it's absolutely staggering to see Jonathan make such incredible statements in Israel in front of a foreign government while being a CEO of a supposedly American organization. This is very troubling. Why is the CEO of the ADL making suggestions and comparisons like this in front of a foreign government? Well, they're kind of one and the same, which is the sad part. It says, what is the true intention and motive here? It says, for those not aware, I'm currently in litigation with the ADL for defamation, very ironically. He went on and said, they put me personally by name into their glossary of extremism and hate, as well as a report made public across multiple media outlets called, quote, Hate in the Lone Star State, Extremism, and Anti-Semitism in Texas. The trial date is set for July 16th, 2025. That also is going to be very interesting. And hopefully I can give you a follow-up on that when the time comes. With that said, here's Jonathan Greenblatt in his own words in 3, 2, 1.
We've got to start doing things differently. And the same goes here in Israel. This means that the problem won't be solved by yet another new Knesset task force. It won't be solved by the government just throwing money at the problem. It won't be solved by the IDF spokesperson's unit issuing updated talking points or suddenly using TikTok. Like us in America, you need to adopt new strategies, to experiment with creative tactics, to study the results and scale what works. Maybe it's a whole new IDF unit, call it 8300, to lead this fight. But we need the kind of genius that manufactured Apollo gold pagers and infiltrated Hezbollah for over a decade to prepare for this battle. We need the kind of courage that executed Operation Deep Layer inside Syria and destroyed Iranian missile manufacturing capabilities to undertake this mission. This is the kind of ingenuity and inventiveness that have always been a hallmark of the state of Israel, that have always been a characteristic of the Jewish people. I know we can do it. We must, you must, take this deadly serious. Pushing extremists off Wikipedia might not seem equal to the challenge of pushing Hezbollah north of the Litani River. Capturing TikTok might seem less meaningful than holding on to Mount Hermon. Libelous tweets certainly might seem less deadly than missiles from Yemen. But this is urgent because the next war will be decided based on how Israel and its allies perform online as much as offline.
What an odd comparison to make, that they should be as innovative in going after quote-unquote anti-Semites, anybody who disagrees with them, as the exact same energy and with the same energy as they have created these methods of murdering their other opponents, regardless of where they are and regardless of the method. In particular, in online environments. This is Bolshevism. 100%. They created it, after all. It is a play in their playbook. They wrote the whole playbook, and it's an open admission that this is the case. So he's basically again saying anti-Semites should be murdered. Well, let's just double down then. That's all. We just double down. All we do is continue to expose these people, continue to use their own words against them, and they'll fall right into their own traps. Again, these people are, they're so evil. They're so evil. They want everybody dead except for them. And you have to agree with them all the time, no matter what. And you can't ever disagree with them about anything ever, because if you do, then you're an anti-Semite. Nice trick. Nice little word trick. It doesn't work on anybody. And I would love, getting back to even congressional hearings of some kind, I would love for somebody to simply bring up the history of the fake made-up word anti-Semitic. Just openly say it as soon as someone says it to them. Just look back at them and say, it's not a real word. It doesn't exist. It's completely made up in an effort to shield individuals, specifically Jews, from being criticized by individuals who are not Jewish. And just let that be it. Hell, they can even bring up the entire history of Zionism, as I've mentioned before, and that entire made-up word and all the other made-up words that they use with such regularity. Just throw it right back in their faces and just watch them again quiver and scream, well, you're only bringing that up because you're an anti-Semite. I mean, it's just not going to work. Greenblatt has nothing better to do. It's his job to sound that dumb. It's his job to go after anybody who criticizes anybody who happens to be Jewish. They're putting every letter and number in all of their ADL hate speech documentation. You're not even allowed, according to them, to say white people matter. You can't even say that. That's hate speech. They're communists. They created communism. They're not going anywhere. We just have to keep calling them out, keep making fun of them. We do it online. We do it on shows like this. We just keep doing it. I don't know how else to attack them. But that's how we do it. We use the Constitution on our side against them and then make them buckle. I just wish that people would, again, stop using these particular terms and even not push back when these terms are being used against them. Learn the history of these words and then again use them back at these people. And they'll have nowhere to go. So there you have it. Okay. Education stuff. Previous guest on the show sent me this. They've recently retired, which is a fantastic thing, and they brought this up in regards to me mentioning the case of Danielle Mann in the past, and certainly in a very recent episode where I was describing how the first assignment that Danielle Mann, again, local school teacher in the town where I live, TikTok famous post-election meltdown, I've been over it before, but how the first assignment, or one of the first assignments that she allegedly had in her classroom, of course, had to do with asking her students to write some kind of a paper or an essay on whether or not an individual in the workplace has freedom of speech, and whether or not they can talk politics or not on their own time, and should that get that person fired, which, as we all know, had everything to do regarding her. The angle, however, that this individual brings up is fantastic, and it's one that I had not considered, but it is also violating certainly her contractual obligations, her code of conduct, and the agreement that she signed to maintain her employment. And it has to do with having such an assignment for the purpose of gathering a list of students' beliefs from a political standpoint to basically see who sides with her and who does not. Again, very sneaky, but that's who she is, and it makes complete and utter sense. So I'm going to read their text message to me, and here's what they said. They said, I've just listened to your podcast 702 about Danielle Mann. Maybe you have covered this already in podcast 703. I haven't listened to that yet. I believe I know exactly why she gave that assignment to her classes. Boy, she didn't waste any time. She's making the list of all of the students that are on her side, and of all of the students that are not on her side. This could even be sanctioned by the district. I can't tell you how many times these last few years students have asked me, out of the blue, how I feel about President Trump or who he is running against. I used to believe as long as you kept your responses positive and brief, say something nice or say nothing at all, then there was no harm in answering. Because that's how it used to be. Not anymore. Assume every question is a trap and being recorded because it is. It's even worse for the students. They said we have students making lists of other students who support conservatives and President Trump. Those secret lunch clubs are a problem. These districts are so top-heavy. What else are they doing with their time? They're making lists, spying on staff, students, and families, because that's what communists do. Parents really need to pull their students from these institutions. It's not as bad as they think. It's much, much worse. They said, I think the district told her to do this, in their opinion, and it's quite possible that they did. They went on and said, if you're this close to retirement and you nearly got fired and got a lot of negative attention, why would this be the first thing you would do when you return? Yeah, that's an excellent point. It could be a fishing expedition, so to speak, and they're just looking again for dirt on students, and they're looking to engage in retaliation and a number of other things. This is exactly why the superintendent in the town where I live has to go. They have to get the majority on the board, and they have to fire him immediately. And as I've said before, you fire the treasurer, and then you take a wrecking ball to the entire district office, and you cut them all loose. That's it. I mean, that's the process. And as you've heard me also say, of course, it's a matter of teachers striking, which again, when was the last time you heard of a teacher strike, let alone in a smaller district where everything has gone completely crazy? Or again, students don't show up anymore. This is how you bring down the American education system, because it's not an education system. It's an indoctrination, torture, brainwashing system, and there's endless government documents and paperwork, of course, that exists on my website that proves this to be the case. In fact, my next Substack article is going to come out, I believe, this weekend, And it has everything to do with Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., which of course is not his real name. He's one of the largest frauds that gets perpetuated in the education system on a constant basis, and yet no one even thinks to look up who he really was, what his role was, who his handlers were, and everything surrounding his personal and private and professional quote-unquote behavior. The man was a full-blown communist and a Marxist. Again, his real name was Michael King. His father simply stole the name Martin Luther from the very well-known German priest from the 14 and 1500s, who criticized Jews, by the way, and accurately so. I digress, but either way, there's all of that information as well. But yeah, again, getting back to the Danielle Mann situation in that particular assignment, when teachers engage in such assignments, yes, that's exactly why they're doing it. They're doing it to see who sides with them, who agrees with them, and who does not. And of course, as you've heard me say before, it's very difficult to get rid of this kind of behavior because it's ingrained in their brains. You can take her out of the environment and fire her, which of course is exactly what you should do. But there's also sort of the leftover collateral damage and residue that exists, in particular among students who actually agree with her and actually believe that freedom of speech and freedom of expression is a one-way road, that it's only for them and not for anybody else. Well, that's not what it means. Again, codes of conduct, contractual and professional behavior, all of this matters. And freedom of speech, again, while it is a constitutional right and we all have it, there's also something that you have to follow, which of course is your legal document that you sign off on, which is a contract and a code of conduct. So, yeah. It's disgusting, but again, she's being favored, and that's why she keeps her job. Okay. Let me mention this too. This was a neat development, and I'm glad that I reached out to this individual because I haven't talked with this individual in a while. And this has to do with Vanessa Hurst. Vanessa Hurst, as it turns out, having been a guest on the show a number of times, randomly out of nowhere, I decided to watch their old Nelson County, Kentucky school board meeting, their most recent one, where again, their superintendent, if you may recall, his name is Wes Bradley. He was fired by the incoming school board members who had the majority. And the very ignorant sycophants in the district and in the town came to Bradley's defense, even though he was cut loose, and then the state of Kentucky came to Bradley's defense and reinstated him, even though lawfully and legally the board got rid of him, which basically, again, neuters the entire school board because now they don't have any say as to who they can approve to fire or hire or whatever. And they're not even in charge of their own superintendent. The guy is off of the leash, so to speak. He's completely unchained. And when you watch one of their board meetings, you can see it in his behavior because he sits at the end of the table and he injects his opinion in every single thing that every board member brings up. You can see him again chewing on his tongue as he's trying very hard again to keep his mouth closed. When he has a great deal of opinions that he has and different takes and angles on a particular issue. The guy's a complete piece of trash. But after watching their latest school board meeting, just out of curiosity, I reached out to Vanessa Hurst. And I texted her and I just said, long time no talk. I said, hope everything's going well. Just watched your latest board meeting out of total curiosity. Haven't paid attention to Nelson County schools in quite some time. Just wanted to catch up with what was actually happening there and asking her whether or not she had any takes on it. As it turns out, Vanessa Hurst is actually training to be a school teacher now. And I got to tell you, I wish her the absolute best. I really do. She said that God's been calling her to be a school teacher for quite some time. She thinks that she can have a positive impact with younger students. And she only intends on teaching within Christian schools and Christian private schools. And she said in Kentucky there is a massive need for teachers in Christian private schools. So, again, with that said, I wish her the best. I pray for her safety and her success, and I hope that works out, because I have no doubt that there are a great deal of students who need her help, and they need a lot of good people's help. Certainly, students in the public sector do too, but and in the public school system, but even so, I hope she stays away from the public school system as much as humanly possible, and focuses on classical curriculum and things of that nature. So, yeah, I wish her the best regarding that. Having said that, she sent me this particular story, which is hilarious, and I want to read this, and there's even some audio that goes along with it. This is again from Kentucky, and it's titled, "Kentucky Students Demand Quality Public Education in Filed Lawsuit Against State." It says, on Tuesday of this week, a group of students, their families, and members from the Kentucky Student Voice Team, KSVT, filed a lawsuit against the Commonwealth, saying that the state has, quote, failed to fulfill its constitutional obligation to provide all students with an adequate and equitable public education. Declining literacy rates, just a couple of bullet points here I'm going to read through before I play this audio. Declining literacy skills, it says, only 41% of Kentucky 8th graders are proficient or above in reading. The next one is lack of civics education. Kentucky is one of just 11 states without a civics course requirement, leaving students unprepared to engage in government processes and civic life. Good Lord. Wow. I didn't even know that. That's terrible. No civics course whatsoever. They probably can't even spell government, let alone understand the Greek and Latin definition of the word, which is horrible. Anyway, the next bullet point, mental health crisis. Of course there is. It says in 2023, nearly 1 in 5, 18.6% of Kentucky high school students reported seriously considering taking their own lives. This, of course, is the very famous CDC Youth Risk Behavior Survey from 2023. It says, yet many, Kentucky schools lack adequate counseling services, with some schools having no counselors at all. The next one is limited arts availability. 18.5% of Kentucky schools report offering no visual or performing arts classes of any kind. And then the last one, severe academic disparities. There are vast differences in achievement between Kentucky districts, in many cases of over 70 percentage points. Here's the audio that goes with this from their local news affiliate, LEX 18 Lexington, in 3, 2, 1.
Glad you're with us tonight. A group of Kentucky students was at the Capitol today filing a lawsuit against the state, claiming that they're not receiving adequate education. Ellen Ice joins us now in studio to explain the lawsuit in greater detail in the LEX 18 Big Story at 11.
Yeah, Larry, standing on the steps of the Franklin Circuit Courthouse, the students outlined why they filed a lawsuit and the urgent need to address the failures of the Kentucky education system.
We are Kentucky students. We are here today because we care about the Commonwealth and our future. We are here today because we refuse to accept the status quo when it comes to our education.
The coalition, called the Kentucky Student Voice Team, filed the lawsuit today at the Capitol. They cite declining literacy scores, lack of civics education, mental health crises, limited arts availability, and severe academic disparities as how the state has failed.
We want to be very clear. This lawsuit does not target any individual Kentucky schools, principals, teachers, or school districts.
Student representatives say they want everyone to feel safe. Controversial topics are discussed thoughtfully. Everyone has a say in decision-making. Funding is fair and transparent. Also,
teachers are paid what they deserve. Class sizes allow for real learning, and transportation is reliable and fully funded.
This stems from the 1989 Rose decision, which spurred the Kentucky Education Reform Act.
Now, 35 years later, those capacities are not being met and students are not getting an adequate education. We just want the court to mandate that the system does need change and, have it out there that that is a fact and that Kentucky schools are failing this generation of students.
A lawyer leading the charge for the lawsuit says he wants this case to have a lasting impact.
We do see this as an important potential precedent that people could go back to court and they can make sure that the constitutional right that their own Supreme Courts have established lasts through the generations.
As for next steps, the coalition plans to hold a year-long series of public hearings to gather insight and ideas from stakeholders across the Commonwealth. Now, I did reach out to the Attorney General's office. A spokesperson says they are reviewing the lawsuit and at this time have no comment. Larry.
Okay, so here's my take on this. While it's amusing, and it looks amusing, and it sounds amusing, and it's highly embarrassing, it's also really just political activism. It's left-wing activism. It's all a show. These individuals, again, these students are left-wing without a doubt. They've been hand-selected by, these lawyers or family members of these lawyers or whoever it is that they actually are. And they, again, appear to be of K-12 age, certainly, I would say, without a doubt, later high school. The funny part is that this is how thick the brainwashing is. It's so thick that these students who are literate and well-spoken are whining about the circumstances of their schools, not knowing the history of American education in the slightest, and yet they're begging government to be better. They have no idea that they can go home, teach themselves, and graduate from high school at the age of 15. They have no idea that they can go home, educate themselves, get a diploma at the age of 15, enter an online university, and graduate by the time they're 18 with a bachelor's degree, and then maybe 1 year later at the age of 19 with a master's degree. They don't know that that's a thing. They don't know that that's existing already in the United States and that endless parents and their children do that all of the time. They have no idea. These teenage activists, unfortunately, we have David Hogg to thank for all of that. We have the Jewish lobby to thank for it. We have a number of individuals, the Greta Thunbergs of the world, and all of these other people who are thrust to the forefront as if to say, well, I'm a high school student and my life matters and so does my opinion and I know more than you do and blah, blah, blah. My message to those people is very simple. No one really cares what you think because if you're advocating for government schooling, you're advocating for the wrong thing. You're advocating for your own slavery and your own brainwashing and the fact that, again, they are as literate and well-spoken as they are, speaking at a lectern outside of the State House, complaining about the state of Kentucky's education system and public education system should prove that they have no business even being there. They don't even know that Abeka.com is a real thing. They don't even know, again, all of the timelines that I just laid out a second ago, that they can graduate from high school before they're 18 years old, that they can get a bachelor's degree before they're 20. They don't know this. So, again, it should prove that the government education system is working exactly as planned. It is keeping these individuals right where they are. It is enslaving them. It is getting them to, again, participate in these political battles that no one else is even wasting their time with who doesn't even attend a government-related school. It's incredible, but that's the matrix for you, and it's got a thick grip on these kids, and it's too bad. But, yeah. They think they're making a difference. They're not. They're just being used. And they're going to put it on their resume probably in the future. I participated in a class action lawsuit against the state of Kentucky because their education system sucked. And that'll get them into some left-wing college or university probably down the line. It might help. But it's not really going to help them. It's the illusion of an accomplishment. So that's my summary on that. But yeah, they're wasting their time. Time is of the essence. Time is precious, and they're throwing it away. And they have no idea. It's embarrassing. Okay, speaking of wasting time and throwing things away, the Westerville City School District. Ladies and gentlemen, this last board meeting here, the first one of the month, was a doozy. Again, I've brought up this school district in the past before, very famously for their most recent failed levy that did not pass back in November, and of course their elimination of LifeWise as a right to release program, or religious instruction release program rather, that they eliminated right before their levy and didn't seem to think that that would have a negative impact on their levy. Again, they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer, but there you have it. Here's what happened, or here's allegedly what they claim happened. This district, Westerville City Schools, along with a boatload of Central Ohio school districts, claimed that they had a breach in their online attendance and grade database, which is referred to as PowerSchool. Let me read the story here for you first, and then I'll get into what PowerSchool is, who runs PowerSchool, and how, yes, there's certainly foreign influence in PowerSchool, and why these school districts don't know this is beyond me. And then, of course, the money laundering aspect of this that they are also not considering because, like I've said, they're not the sharpest knives in the drawer. This is from the Columbus Dispatch, and it was titled, Data from Several Central Ohio School Districts comprised in PowerSchool Data Breach. This was on the 10th of January. It says a data breach has affected several Central Ohio school districts that use PowerSchool software, a platform that allows districts to manage and store information about class assignments, attendance, and more, including their social security numbers, by the way. Addresses, emails, phone numbers, parents' names, you name it. It says the California-based company, whose website says it serves 60 million students at 18,000 school districts and organizations, told its customers that a hacker downloaded a large amount of student, family, and educator data through its PowerSource community-focused customer portal on December 28th. PowerSchool paid the ransom, and the data was deleted. So they say. Again, who's to say the ransom was even real? It says the company is working with the FBI's cybersecurity operation. Well, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. Again, I have to get into this now before I mention the large list of schools that participate in this, and even schools that participate in programs like it. When you have a company like PowerSchool, which, by the way, is run by Indians by and large, with the occasional Jew sprinkled in, these companies always have foreign influence. It openly says on their website that they attend Asian conferences, that there's Asian influence and Asian money wrapped into their company, which immediately should tell people, certainly China, it should instantly tell them that there's absolutely no way that an American anybody should be on that particular platform, more specifically a child, and that child's personal information should, again, be sold to the highest bidder, which is exactly what's taking place here. It's just the exchanging of data from children to individuals who create algorithms and any other online ad performance or ads that show up on a child's Chromebook, which many of these students, of course, have Chromebooks, let alone the ability to actually spy on the children using the microphones that exist within those laptops and the cameras that are always on. But at the exact same time, it's designed, again, to tailor these students and these children into certain positions or certain wavelengths of thought, or buying particular objects, or putting their focus in a particular area. Not to mention, as you've heard me bring up on the show before, the various K-12 school programs themselves and the technological programs that they adopt are doing this to students anyway. It tracks their grades, their behavior, they're likely to succeed, and it's putting them in a kill box, for lack of a better phrase. It really is putting them in a long-term, professional kill box of sorts in order, again, to sort of create a digital footprint of these children before they even accomplish anything or really do anything in their lives outside of the American K-12 schooling system. It's remarkably dangerous. And these school systems have no idea. They just, again, blindly adopt these particular technological tools because they view them as a convenience. It doesn't even matter if it's a convenience or not, or if it's perceived to be a convenience or not. It's dangerous because it's minors online. It's minors plugged in all of the time, certainly throughout the course of a regular school day, in at least, I would say, half of their classes on a constant basis. Everybody get out your laptops and log in, and then they have to use their username, password, and then, of course, they're in. And that's what they were doing, of course, in 2020, when they sent all children across the United States home with a computer in their hands. They were all logging in, which means all of that data and those kill boxes of that child's environment and that digital footprint were being created. Again, it's a wavelength of thought that your average American K-12 school employee can't possibly wrap their head around, let alone their IT department, let alone, again, school board members. They have no idea what they're doing. And again, as I said earlier, who's to say that PowerSchool didn't just do this themselves and then tell everybody, well, don't worry, the FBI is involved and the FBI does nothing but good things, so what could possibly go wrong? They're the nation's largest investigative body. They'll get to the bottom of who did this, and that will be that. I'm not saying that cyber ransoms don't exist. They do. I'm not saying security breaches from a technological standpoint don't exist. They certainly do. But there are also companies that work with foreign agencies to hand them information under the story and the fairy tale of it being a data breach when in fact maybe they were just allowed to do it. And then they pay them a certain amount of money to have them delete the data, so they say and so they tell people, to then only get a kickback or receive all of that money back in exchange for the data that they just released. Again, this is a level of illegality and criminal behavior and a criminal mindedness that they're just not, they're not aware of. So Westerville City Schools, again, was one of them. Upper Arlington, it says, City Schools was also affected by the data breach, so they say. Canal Winchester City Schools, they use PowerSchool, it says, to store student information, but the extent of the breach is still unclear, according to a statement. Bexley City Schools uses PowerSchool to record basic student information such as names, home address, and contact information, according to a letter the district sent to families. That spokesperson, blah, 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 told people. Let's see, New Albany, Plain local schools. It says they use PowerSchool to track and record student data. Reynoldsburg City Schools uses PowerSchool and notified all parents Friday that some student data, such as directory information, could have been breached. Grandview Heights Schools uses PowerSchools also, and they're doing their own investigation. Yeah, I'm sure they'll get to the bottom of it. Lancaster City Schools was also affected. Granville Exempted Village Schools was also affected by the breach. Olentangy Local Schools also by the breach. And then it says not all systems affected. Some districts use other platforms. For example, Columbus City Schools, the state's largest school district with some 45,000 students, uses Infinite Campus as their software for class schedules, assignments, grades, attendance, and much more. Hilliard City Schools appears, it says, from online information to use PowerSchool software, but its district spokesperson says that they have not been affected by the data breach. Walnut Township Local School District IT Coordinator, let's see, district only uses PowerSchool for its website and not for student data, it says. Licking Heights Local School District uses PowerSchool services but was not affected by the breach. And it goes on and on and on. Gahanna Jefferson Public Schools, Dublin City School District, Pickerington, Worthington, they all discontinued its district portal on January 3rd. And they use Infinite Campus also, not PowerSchool. So, yeah. Again, I've brought up the dangers of technology and all of this information on computers for children. It doesn't have to exist. You don't have to have it. It can be held in a locked filing cabinet, the way that it was when we went to school, in a folder with your name, where it has your name, address, and then any information pertaining to you, whether it be a 504, an IEP, or any other, documentation that they think they need to have on you. It doesn't need to be digitized, because anything and everything that is digitized is not private. It's the illusion of privacy. It's the illusion of security. Again, the homeschooling family doesn't have to deal with this. It's not their problem. They never have to deal with any of this, whether they are online in an online homeschooling curriculum or they're not. They're not subjected to these data breaches by and large. Again, if you get on PowerSchool's website, which is powerschool.com, you'll see all that you need to see in order to prove to you exactly what I just said in describing this particular company and this program. It's a global company because anything on the internet is global. If you click on global regions at the very top on the top bar here, it says find solutions available in Asia Pacific, Canada, Europe, India, Latin America Spanish, and Middle East and Africa. They have international schools, ministries of education. Again, what could possibly go wrong? Why is it that all of these American schools have these foreign companies and these foreign entities with all of this foreign influence? It's not a good thing. It's not a good idea. Again, if you get on their website and you scroll down a little bit, there's a 2-minute video here, give or take, and it's titled Powering Education with AI Innovation. It says, get to know PowerSchool Power Buddy, which has been trademarked, the AI-powered assistant that delivers personalized insights, fosters engagement, and creates a supportive environment for everyone in education. I'm going to turn the volume down on this and just read you what is on this screen as it plays. It starts off with rap music, why wouldn't it? It says, hello, I'm Power Buddy. Imagine each student has a digital helper. Hello, Eric. Let's help you find this, that, and the other. And then again, when you download the PowerSchool app, you're communicating again with an AI system on a child's cell phone or an iPad or a Chromebook or whatever device has this particular AI system downloaded on it. And what are they doing? They're just gathering your information. They're just creating a digital footprint. The same thing is true with the actual teachers themselves. Teachers will get on it, ask it a question, and then it provides them an answer, including intervention plans for behavior, absences, a number of other things. You're asking a robot. You're asking, again, a robot that has been programmed by a human being to provide you an answer under the illusion that it's somehow a better answer than the one that you can come up with on your own. It's completely stupid. I cannot believe that schools do this, but I can because they're foolish. And they adopt these things all of the time because they're getting some kind of a financial kickback. Or it's just thrust upon them and they don't have a choice. Again, their website is highly suspicious. If you click on the word company in the upper bar and you click on our partners, it says our partners, strategic partners, and then become a partner under their partnerships. Their partners are groups with the names Strong and Associates Educational Consulting, LLC, a group called Vizor, V-I-Z-O-R, for Chromebooks, and it helps school districts manage Chromebooks by consolidating data and streaming IT processes. A group called Vanco, again, your one-stop shop for school payments, it says. Ditch the patchwork of legacy software and accept Vanco. Time Clock Plus is another one. There's another one called Level Data. Our managed data integration and validation services proactively resolve data and state compliance issues within PowerSchool. And then finally, Centegix. Yes, that's right, Centegix again. Centegix, it says, Visitor Management is a longtime partner of PowerSchool and holds a seamless data exchange badge, along with, again, endless other conglomerates here. My God. PowerSchool partners 911 Inform, a group called Abnormal Security, a group called Access 411, another one called An Education, Attendance K-12, August Schools, Baton Rouge, School Transport App, Bench Prep, Bloxy, Bloom's Book Systems, Boom Learning, Britannica Education, Bus Boss, Canva, Career Key, Carnegie Learning, what could be suspicious about that? Centegix again, one called Centerpoint Education Solutions, Class Solver is another one, Class Hook, ClickView, Code.org, Common App is another one, CipherWorks, Discovery Ed, and eFunds for Schools. It keeps going. This is endless. It's all alphabetical, and these are all of the groups that work with PowerSchool. Under no circumstances would I want my child's data, or my data, which is basically what my child's data would be, on a computer like this, with all of these companies with access to it. Absolutely not. No one's thinking here. Nobody's thinking. Just give us your private information, don't worry, nothing bad will happen. That means that every single one of those companies is a failure. Or again, it's money laundering. And all of this again just happened. Or they sold it. They sold all the data to the highest bidder and just called it a data breach. We made a mistake, or we were hacked, we paid the ransom because we don't know what they did with the data and blah, 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 but don't worry, it's not our fault. Too many fingers in this cookie jar. Here are their actual individuals that sit on their board of trustees, their leadership team, so to speak. Here are their names. Hardeep Gulati is their chief executive officer. Their chief financial officer is Brent Bowman. Chief revenue officer is a Tony Kender, and then it's more Indians. Duremvda Singh, Shivani Strumpf, a Paul Brook, a Michael Bisinjanio, I don't know, Michelle Hadid, a Darren Flagg, a Grayson Williams, and then two more Indians, a Regine Data and a Araprav Nashal. Honest to God. The answer is no. We don't need more Indians in IT, and we don't need more Indians controlling these companies that have access to the data of minors that don't belong on a database online of any kind. So again, I don't know how to summarize it really, other than to say the more that a child and a minor is online, the more likely their information is to be hacked into and for them to be located, of course, if not trafficked. And again, when you're associated with these massive conglomerates and multi-million-dollar corporations called American Public Schools, and these public schools blindly and willfully adopt these technology programs for, again, under the guise of it being a convenience for everyone or easy to manage or what have you, it's not. It just isn't. These programs, again, when I was a school teacher, were localized. Yes, some of them, of course, were national, but they weren't global. They didn't have any kind of a global influence or a global funding or a global touch, so to speak. Again, yeah, they were online, and anybody anywhere, I suppose, could have accessed said information. But there was one thing, of course, that certainly teachers, when I was teaching school, were starting to see and starting to pay attention to, which was the digitization of all of this information being online and being accessible online to any teacher no matter what. Discipline referrals, attendance, personalized information of students, 504s, IEPs, etc., etc. I mean, I was watching all of this happen because, again, it was being uploaded by special education liaisons and a number of other district officials and being managed on their internal servers. But this is beyond reach here. You're talking about foreign companies and foreign countries having access to this information. And then, of course, they say, well, what are they going to do with it? Well, what's it matter? Well, what does it matter? You're talking about identity theft. That's another angle of this, again, that they're not considering. Just abandon it. Go back to pen and paper. Why is that so hard? Go back to typing it out on a personal computer and then printing out a hard copy and keeping it in a manila folder in a locked, in a locked filing cabinet. This is not a difficult thing. But it's a digital world, unfortunately, and you're seeing the rollout even of AI within this PowerSchool program, and it's completely useless. Which brings me to this. In that same Westerville board meeting, one of their district official nitwits gets up to the lectern, and he says that their district is adopting artificial intelligence. He openly, again, just fully admits it, and he says it's not going to cost them anything from a monetary standpoint. There's no cost to adopting artificial intelligence. Joke's on him, and joke's on all of them. There's always a cost. There's a monetary cost. There's a brain capacity cost. There's an instructional cost, and none of it is good. Again, they're not thinking about the consequences of implementing AI as an instructional method, and that it actually is designed to create more conflict, but also pacify, brainwash, hypnotize, and get people to believe that if they use an app to look up an answer, then that must be the answer. Well, the computer said so. Well, I clicked the AI thing from this company and it said that this was the answer, so this is the answer. That's not thinking. That's not critical thinking. That's relying on a computer program designed by human beings to give you a predetermined answer to a pre-selected question. It's absurd. I can't believe that anybody's falling for this, but they are. This is the business. This is the direction it's going in. Again, as you've heard me say before, they're using AI systems to hire people. It's within HR departments. They're taking their resumes, they're filtering it through an AI system, they're cutting and pasting the words on a resume into an AI system, and then the AI system says, this is the person we think you should hire. This seems to be the most qualified individual based on keywords and language and typos and whatever else. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Anyway, the board meeting went on, and it was a work session, which is hilarious because work sessions that are publicly aired, you really get to see the stupidity of these board members and the way that they behave and, the things that they attempt to solve and whatever else. They're going to put another levy on the ballot in May. They've made this determination. It's going to be a $4.9 million levy without a bond issue attached to it, but no one should vote for it. They should continue to make the district make cuts, fire individuals, reduce salaries, not make renovations in particular areas, remove useless instruction. Hell, how about you destroy your contract with PowerSchool? What does that cost? What are you paying PowerSchool? They just prove to you that they can't be trusted. They're tied to foreign countries. You shouldn't trust them anyway. But haven't they just proved that they're useless? And that anybody can hack into this, quote unquote? Again, they're not thinking. There's also this, based on House Bill 8, which I brought up in a previous episode in the state of Ohio, which has been approved and signed off on by the feckless Governor DeWine, although this was a good signature, it's forcing now schools to not use pronouns and made-up pronouns. So there's no more they, them, Zerzy, his, hers, all that shit. It's basically his or her students is the language now that everybody's being told to use. That it's his students, her students, their students, and you're all students when it comes to addressing students. Isn't that strange? There has to be a law for a teacher to make it okay to look at their students and call them students. This is the state of affairs in this communistic country that we live in called America. Incredible. Let's see. There's another portion also, a policy allegedly by the district where the parents, and I believe this was attached to the law also, where parents can review technology companies and district contracts with technology companies through a FOIA request and an open records request with the district. Hello, PowerSchool. All you have to do is do an open records request on what what PowerSchool is costing Westerville City Schools and all of those schools that had their data breached, allegedly. That would be worth knowing. I bet it's a boatload of cash. And yes, parents should do investigations on these tech companies that are adopted by school districts. And yes, if you're dumb enough to still attend, you should tell the school boards themselves because they don't know because they're not that bright. Let's see. They also did this, which was interesting. Along with the adoption of AI, of course, and now, of course, you can ask particular questions about what tech companies are doing and all of that influence. They're being forced now as school districts across the state of Ohio, and we know why, to basically put on the front pages of all of their district websites how anybody can obtain an open records request or request an open records request for information and contact, again, their treasurer and district office to gain emails and other information, numbers, you name it. Now, why, again, did this have to become law in the state of Ohio? It had to become law because in the last 4 years, endless school districts were being bombarded with open records requests, and endless people didn't know how to do an open records request. And districts were purposefully keeping this information from the public and parents and employees because they don't want people to know what they're doing. That's what a criminal organization does. That's the kind of behavior that a multi-million-dollar criminal organization engages in. And now the state of Ohio has said you have to make this easy, accessible, understandable for the public on your websites. Don't bury it in some subchapter on your website. It needs to be right up front on the website, easily accessible. Again, image protection, hand rubbing, scheming, meddling. It's par for the course for this business. It's par for the course for the entire business. Again, it's going to be very interesting. Linda McMahon testifying in front of the Education, Workforce, and Labor Committee, or whatever the hell that committee is called, at the federal level, and getting her opinions on all of this. Again, time is going to tell on all of that, but I'm going to bring that audio to you and do my best, of course. I will watch the entire hearing in its entirety, because I think it's going to be interesting. Again, the people are going to, those who scream the loudest have the most to hide, and that's exactly what's been going on in a lot of these cabinet hearings as well. So people are exposing themselves with, again, their lack of knowledge on particular issues and a number of other things. But the Education Committee is going to be an interesting one. Okay, to wrap up here, let me go through this particular article. This article that I referenced again at the very beginning of the episode here, this is from politicalmoonshine.com. The article is titled "The Inferno of the 47th Presidential Inauguration." It says, analysis, the warnings have been clear and redundantly issued over years as we encroach on the inferno that is the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, the 47th president. And then they said, hell is coming. This again was written on and published on January 15th. It says the following here. Again, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I will read pieces of it. It says, the warnings have been clear and redundantly issued over years as we encroach on the inferno that is the inauguration of Donald J. Trump, the 47th president, this being a recent example from the last article. Quote, buckle up for the asymmetrical operations from every angle. The fact that the ICDOD-NATO state conglomerate and its congressional assets certified the 2024 election is a clear indicator of the hell to come. The analysis examined the peculiarities of the intelligence community, Pentagon, NATO, State Department conglomerate, and its shift to contingency operations and continued opposition of Trump, and what it means relative to the ongoing and escalating asymmetrical warfare occurring in the United States. The clear indication is that hell is coming, and for those entrapped in the inferno, that is the broader LA fires. It already arrived. The problem is, however, they're only getting warmed up. And if the inferno is the warm-up, what does that say about what is in store from Monday until the point in time these people are finally made to stop. This piece shined a light on those possibilities. Again, it was an article titled, What Comes Next After Congress Certifies 2024 Election? And then it says, in today's piece, we follow up on existing positions with further evidence and analysis. It says RICO crimes of COVID-19. The most important aspect of the aggregate COVID-19 RICO crimes is the statute of limitations, which is 5 years. And then it lays out again the entire statute. It says Title 18 of the U.S. Code, Section 3282, provides that no person may be brought to trial, prosecuted, or punished for any non-capital offense unless they are indicted or information is filed within 5 years. It is important to note that some criminal activities that might be connected with racketeering may not be protected by the short statute of limitations provided by Title 18. They went on and said the caveat may be unless, quote unquote, information is filed within 5 years. They said our team filed a RICO-based petition for a federal grand jury investigation of COVID-19, and I would argue to exhaustion that the filing preserves the statute of limitations to avoid its expiration as a qualifier for, quote, information filed within 5 years, unquote. It says we are in preparations to refile. It goes on, it says RICO crimes and Throckmorton doctrine. It says the RICO crimes of the COVID-19 remain ongoing. Immediately after the November election and on behalf of millions of Americans, I wrote another open letter to President-elect Trump imploring him to consider immediate action relative to the RICO crimes of COVID-19 and calling for, quote, action that would make the victims of the COVID-19 pandemic, quote unquote. They know there was no pandemic, so do I, so do you. It says an immediate priority for the incoming administration and whereby a remedy be created to administer justice in spite of a completely rigged judiciary. It'd be interesting to see if any of that happens. The letter can be read here, and it cites something called the Throckmorton Doctrine, which pertains to the U.S. Supreme Court case of U.S. versus Throckmorton, and holds that, quote, there is no question of the general doctrine that fraud violates the most solemn contracts, documents, and even judgments, unquote. They have a link to that also. It says the leader of my team, which is litigating against the federal apparatus over COVID-19 RICO crimes, Dr. Henry Early, if I'm saying that right, recently asked me to elaborate on Throckmorton. And they do that in a rather lengthy explanation, but again, I'll link this in the description below if you're interested in reading it. I recommend it. Let me see here. The next portion of this article says operational lawfare. It says years of analysis have been spent examining the operational lawfare targeting the Trump umbrella and everyone beneath it. And of course, this includes public enemy number one, Jack Smith, who recently resigned from the DOJ. Of course, who was coming to his defense during all of these cabinet hearings? None other than Adam Schiff. Because he would have to, because, well, he's involved. It says, unsurprisingly, and upon his exit, the product of certain aspects of Smith's operational lawfare, which takes the form of a constructed report in multiple parts, was cleared for release by the judiciary and made public on Monday. It says the product of the report will be to serve as a catalog of quotations which will be extracted by Trump's opponents and leveraged to undermine his second administration, and this will be especially so in mainstream reporting. Then there's, of course, Judge Juan Merchan. They bring him up. And then the next section is conventional and asymmetrical warfare. It says there are two considerations here, conventional warfare with a projected kinetic flashpoint and asymmetrical warfare that has been ongoing since no later than August of 2019. Conventional war, the projected time frame for a kinetic flashpoint to conventional war, will take the form of World War III, as the analysis has arduously and intensely laid out since a foreign policy shift by the incoming Biden administration in late December of 2019. The next section they have listed here is titled Energy. It says the following. It says, remember what I positioned in June of 2021 in an unrivaled and substantial piece that energy is the currency of international corruption. And of course, they have this giant flow chart here with Exxon and HSBC and the Carlyle Group and BlackRock and TD Bank and everything else, Citgo, you name it, they're all there. It says, what are the two epicenters of the Biden crime family's corruption and treason, and what do they have in common? The respective answers: CEFC, China Energy Company, Burisma, and Energy. It says China and Ukraine, Russia also happen to be two of the three projected theaters for World War III, the third being the energy-dominated Middle East. And it goes on, discusses the Russia-Ukraine proxy war, exposed biolabs in Ukraine, strong enough position for negotiations, NATO chief. And then it says, overlay that analysis with the development for a tingle of possible good fortunes. Trump affirms that he'll meet Putin very quickly after the inauguration. It brings up South Korea. This is a very lengthy article, and again, very well done. A lot of information here. I'm going to stop it there because, again, there's tons of stuff here. But they're connecting a lot of dots, and they're basically saying, again, a lot of shit is going to hit the fan here. And if you don't start cutting these particular strings and extinguishing these, metaphorical and literal fires, so to speak, certainly from a company standpoint, and start hanging some people, these people are going to continue to flail about. It does bring up this here toward the end. It brings up the inauguration specifically. It says, Mr. Trump must literally survive until he is inaugurated, but knowing that the dangers of assassination will remain thereafter. Obviously, significant house cleaning at the U.S. Secret Service will mitigate those threats to some degree, especially of the insider threat variety, the label of which I've argued was applied to Trump as the predication to target him with operations. The current inferno, fueled by multiple assassination attempts, information operations, weaponized propaganda, operational lawfare, cultural Marxism, perception management operations, asymmetrical warfare, and conventional war, all being leveraged against Trump to intercede on and hamstring his incoming administration, will only escalate until Trump or someone else intercedes on them fully and finally. While I appreciate the heightened security around Inauguration Day, on its face, the evidence indicates that the approach is another Hegelian dialectic construct to normalize militarization, just like the constant threat of terrorism, quote unquote. It says, consider this. They have another link to an article regarding, again, troops, drones, and fences being put up and 1,000 other things. Abject Biden delusion is another one. Pretext. The hallmark indicator for operations is the pretext that is positioned before events. Operations are unpacked on us. So again, a lot of information here. This is interesting. It says, final remarks, by all indications, this inauguration will maintain its trajectory, to being an inferno. I therefore think, they said, that we're in store for some very difficult times in the very near future, as underpinned by the 20 January 25 timeline, 20 through 25 timeline. Again, it's interesting points. I don't think it's fear-mongering, but I do understand the avenue that the enemy wants him gone. The enemy wants him dead, and they're not going to stop until they get what they want. And of course, three-letter agencies have been participating in this, and their conglomerates and their associates, and we know that. But until they're completely rubbed out, and until there's actual accountability that everybody can see at face value that actually happens and isn't hidden from the mainstream media, until that happens, these people are going to keep moving forward and try to eliminate it. And even if people are held accountable for the things that they've done, regardless of how far back that goes, again, even if the RICO statute expires, that's not going to stop the enemy from continuing to move forward, I think, and try to take shots at him or try to blow something up or, again, create disruption and more social engineering and things of this nature. I think people can expect that. I'm not saying that good guys aren't fighting bad guys behind the scenes. They most certainly are. Of this, I'm certain. But at the same time, as long as the bad guys still have control of the media apparatus in this country to some extent, then people will still believe what comes on their idiot box. They'll still believe it at face value. So time is going to tell with all of this. Again, keep a sharp eye, keep a sharp ear. Keep carrying a gun, and get your children out of American schools. Again, they are soft targets after all, and I don't think many people bought the fake Madison, Wisconsin shooting. I think a lot of people did, and then it stirred up a bunch of outrage and emotion. But there were no facts that there was an actual shooting. That was fake. But what if a school is actually burning? What if a school again completely gets bombed and eliminated? I mean, hell. The ones in LA didn't they? All kinds of schools are gone. Now, fortunately, there was no one inside, so we think. But even so, an attack on a school would be something that is plausible. Because again, if you still have all of these so-called sleeper cells, again, that are working around the clock and coordinating with one another and communicating with one another on a constant basis, in particular illegal aliens, gang members, things of that nature, then, they're going to get orders. And their orders are going to be coordinated for a particular time, a particular day, and a certain kind of target. So, again, I'm not hoping this happens. I don't want it to happen, clearly, because I'm not a psycho. People just need to be vigilant, and they need to understand that this is a very real thing. And we are at war and have been at war for quite some time, and that's not going away. So, yeah, with that said, ladies and gentlemen, I'll catch you on Monday, Inauguration Day. And we'll see what information comes out over the weekend regarding a great deal of things, and I'll bring that to you as best I can. With that said, thanks for listening as always, and I'll catch you then. Peace. Thank you for listening to American Education FM. Make sure and check out AmericanEducationFM.com for more information. Take care and God bless.